On this episode of my 1990 MasterCraft project, I'll be taking care of all the nicks and scratches by using a simple do-it-yourself Gelcoat repair kit that I picked up for less than $60. I'll cover all the steps I took. I'll talk about what went right and what didn't. But when we're done, I'll leave you with the confidence to fix those nicks and scratches in your own boat. Okay, when I bought the boat, it had Washington registration tags up here, and then it had Oregon down below. And this was the condition of the Oregon tags, or what's left of them when I brought the boat home. So as you can see, there's plenty of scratches in the blue Gelcoat all the way back to here. So I experienced this on the other side. I've already polished the other side. It's a long process. I had to sand some of these with 220 grit and then work my way all the way up to 2500 grit. So 220, 400, 600, 1000, 1500, 2000, 2500, and then polished it. So it looks pretty good. I just noticed that one of the scratches is all the way down to the fiberglass. It's through the entire Gelcoat. So that's going to require a Gelcoat repair right there before I can do the registration. That's a bummer. I do have a Gelcoat repair kit of a generic one. I'm going to see how I can do matching the color. I'm not going for show quality here. I want it to look nice and presentable, you know. 20-footer would be good. This is where somebody had put some kind of a putty or something. We found this kind of putty all over the boat, inside and out. This is actually the same stuff that was used on the one of the previous muffler repairs. Not sure what it is, but it pops off pretty easily with this razor blade. And I can see why they did it. There's a pretty good gouge under here. It's going to need some Gelcoat work. But since I'm going to be doing some other Gelcoat repair, I'm going to get this exposed so I can mix some up and do a bunch of it at once. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good size. A bit of damage there. Gelcoat's not very thick. It's not as thick as I was hoping it was. You gotta be really careful when you're polishing this or sanding some of these repairs. I actually did go through on the top, on the white part in one spot. It's polished right through to the blue. Oh, that's a great sound. All right, just the last bit of that silly putty. Okay, I can fix that. And there's another good sized gouge right there that'll need to be Gelcoat repaired. Removing these decals is painfully slow. I've decided to show you this removal of the letter M in real time, just to illustrate what it takes to pick these little decals off of here. Using a heat gun, I get it pretty warm. I try not to get it too hot because I don't want to mess up the Gelcoat. But there's kind of a sweet spot there when it's warm enough that it wants to come off, but not so hot you can't touch it. But you really have to have some patience for this part of it. And I did spend several hours removing all the decals. I should also mention that my fingers hurt for an entire day from picking at all this stuff. While I'm finishing up here, I'll tell you what's coming up next. I went to West Marine and picked up a do-it-yourself Gelcoat repair kit, and that's what we're going to use to fix a bunch of these little scratches and nicks, and these kits are great for that, but I wouldn't recommend it for anything on a larger scale.
So here's our makeshift mixing station, and Ken just took a little sample on there to try to see what we need for tinting. We've got blue right out of the tube. Grab that tube there. Yeah, we've got blue right out of the tube here. We mixed it with our polyester Gelcoat paste, and I'm not swirling it because I don't want a bunch of air bubbles in here. Experience in the past was you get air in here and you end up with pits in your repair. As luck would have it, this blue pigment is exactly the right color for the boat, so we won't have to do any tinting. And we're putting it on just a shade lighter than needed because it'll dry darker.
Oh, okay. And I'll work on these little ones.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you only have 15 minutes working time, but it's not going to dry completely. Oh, it'll be tacky if you don't cover it up, right?
Yeah, it'll just never cure. It'll get kind of hard to the touch, but it'll always be sticky if you don't cover it.
Okay, well, we have a pretty good amount of working time. We're still doing some finishing touches here.
I'll make a note here that before we applied the gel coat, we sanded each of the repair areas with 600 grit sandpaper.
Get those
just slightly
spots
high,
done.
so you got something to sand.
Okay.
This one I left pretty high. That was that real deep one, so I left it high on purpose so we can block that.
Okay. And then we got 4 or 5 along here. This pretty deep one in the back, and I left that. And this is actually pretty high. What do you think about that one?
I'd leave it. We
Yeah.
can sand it and form it.
Okay.
I'd leave it. Are we ready? Should I start smearing some wax?
Let's do
paper
some
on?
wax paper now. So just tear pieces off. Because we got to be careful not to push into on the deeper ones that we do.
No. You're blocking the air.
Okay.
Gel coat doesn't dry unless it's sealed from the air.
Okay. All right. Put this down.
The other method is to spray a PVA over this.
Okay, what does PVA stand for?
Oh,
Okay, erased around and got the wax paper on. Just needs to cover up the repair. So we need 1 hour for this to dry. And then we'll come back, sand these with maybe a little block and some 600. And then polish that up. All right, looking good.
yeah.
I'm working on some small gel coat repairs all around the boat. There are a number of nicks and scratches, and there are some areas where there were eyelets on here for the bimini top where there's spider cracking around the mounting hole. So I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to practice on those spots because the brackets are going to pretty much cover them. And what I'm learning about these small gel coat repairs are on the white. If you cut back the area you're going to repair, clean up that area with a grinder or what I use is a Dremel tool, and you expose in this case, the blue behind it or any dark surface behind there, the white is very transparent. So I'm finding that I'm not putting enough pigment in the gel coat mix. So I'm going to continue to work on trying to get more pigment in there, because what's happening, and I'll show you up close, is that I'm getting the repair done, but you can see
through it. So here's an area where I've done just the first pass with the sanding 220 grit, and you can easily see where I cut out the area of the little spider cracks. So it's going to be fine here because that bracket's going to pretty much cover the whole thing. But that's why I wanted to play with this. So here's an area where I just pulled the wax paper off. And that's what it looks like before I sand. It's built up pretty high, and I'll show you how I sand that carefully so that I'm not getting into the surrounding areas, because this gel coat's very thin, and under this white gel coat here is the blue. So here's where I've cut out there was a large spider crack right here. And I've cut out these cracks and exposed the blue gel coat beneath. And so I have to make sure when I repair this that I have enough pigment in it that you cannot see through. I don't want to see this. So I've already done the repair down here, and it turned out really nice. I figured out how to mix the blue so it's really close, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. So I want this to be equally as nice through it. This one here was a little the color match is just perfect right out of the tube. So I'm super happy with that. But I don't want to see this. So I'm going to end up cutting this one back out and do this again. So I left it a little bit high so I have material to work with. And we'll see how we do. So how I'm going about this is I just use some pressure with my pinky and block it like this. I could use a block, and I have a block, and I might use it here in a little bit, but I'm just trying to take down some material, and I work from the inside of the repair out towards the margins, because I want to keep the paper off of the original gel coat around it, because like I said, it's very thin. So I want to work on just getting the high parts down. And what I like about this, and I've done a lot of body work on cars, is this is very forgiving. You couldn't get away with something like this on a car. But with a boat, they're so imperfect that I can do this and not worry about it. I'll get the block and show you how to do that. I use just the end of the block because I don't want to use the whole block. If I use the whole block and sand this, I'll be knocking the high parts down, but it's going to be sanding all the way out here. I do not want to have to do more sanding on this than I need to. I'm already going to sand it with 1,000 grit and up to probably 2,500 before I polish it, just to get the imperfections out. Some areas I won't need to do that, but others I will. But so I'm going to put the block in, just work off this little end, right? Work in this area with the block and not go past it. And this takes everything down evenly. And I've done it this way, and I've also just done an entire one with my fingers, and that works too. And the nice thing about this gel coat, it's super soft. It sands really easy with 220 grit. The instructions will tell you to do all this with 600, but you'll be here all day. And if you're careful and you watch your margins and you just go to where you get those margins leveled off with the repair, you can leave it a little high. And I noticed that about some other repairs on this boat that were probably professionally done. They're high, and that's because they probably know not to get carried away. Just for clarification, although I do start with 220 grit, I do work my way up to finer grits as I work through the repair. And I try not to push very hard. You just want to let the paper do the work. It's coming down, and I just do a little bit and I check it. And it takes some patience. I just keep checking it. And I'm going to go until I can't see any pits, as long as I can do that without getting into the original material too far. on this little spot there was just a little nick right here, and it went all the way through to the Gelcoat, or to the fiberglass. It was deep, but it was very small. So I mixed up a separate mix for this, and I did put more pigment in. It looks like I got a better pigmentation. So I'm gonna see how we do here once I get down to the level of the repair of the nick. So I'm gonna be very careful here. I'm working with my fingertip. I'm just working on the high parts. Now there's a body line here, and you gotta be really careful sanding on a body line, whether it's a car or a boat. You can go through a lot faster on a body line. So I'm working below it, and I'm working above it. And I'm not gonna touch that body line until my very last couple of passes, and I'm gonna try to stay on the material, on the new material. This stuff is really easy to sand. It's easier to sand than any Bondo or most car finishes don't sand as easy. So far, I like what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing good color. And I would probably be good by leaving this a little high. I'm gonna work on these margins a little bit. Down here, I could definitely get away with leaving it a little bit high. It's really high. And I keep running my hand over it, because you can feel more than you can see. So just run your hands over it and you can feel it's very high. So I feel safe at taking a little more material down. My 400 wet here. Actually, a little blemish right here. Just sand that out. I'm gonna switch to 600. I'll do a bigger area, because I'm gonna sand the whole thing with 1,000. And 1,000 will take out the 600 sand scratches. And I like, when I'm doing this boat, I like to do straight line sanding instead of circular motions. Just because with Gelcoat, again, how forgiving it is, if some of those sand scratches happen to show through, you're just not going to see them. But if you sand in a circular motion, they're more likely to be seen. Now, just working on this, I can barely even tell where my repair is. Need to get it on here thick enough that I have material to take down. The trick here is know when to quit. Clean out my spreader with every pass, so I'm not just continuing to go over it. So that's what it looks like there, so I don't continue to go over it with a smeared spreader. Kind of like that. It may require another application, but I hope not. While you were away, I sanded the white Gelcoat application that I showed, and I'm really happy with the color. It's just spot on. But the mistake I made is that I did not sand this area far enough beyond my repair to deal with the fading that existed here. So now what I've got is a shadow around my repair, and the more I sand this repair, two things happen.
One is the shadow just continues to move into the repair area, and I'm starting to expose the actual cuts that I made in the material. So rather than completely covering the spider crack cuts that I made, those are starting to be exposed. And if I continued to sand this, I could get it all the way down to where that's the only thing that you see are the 4 or 5 cuts. I'm tempted to try that because the color is so spot on that it's possible that it would be the better of the two evils. I would be able to see a little bit of my repairs if I were to look right at this spot versus having to look at this halo effect. So I think the best thing to do is leave it alone and make this a learning experience. This is gonna all fade at some point, and this is not gonna be so obvious. Plus I'm gonna have a stripe through here, I'm gonna have a decal here, I'm gonna have stuff going on the boat, and I'm gonna be the only person that's gonna know this repair exists. And it'll bug me to look at it, but I don't think anyone else is even gonna notice it. So I'm gonna try to control myself and leave it alone for now. All right, I'm done repairing all those nicks and scratches. And I'm really happy with how that little do-it-yourself kit worked out for me on this project. The next step was the hours of sanding the boat with 1000 grit and then 1500 grit before polishing with a 3M cutting compound, and I'll put the link for that compound down below. I'm using my high-speed polisher from Harbor Freight. I've had that thing for years and years, and it just keeps going strong. It actually comes with an extra set of brushes I never had to put on it. So back to the boat. It really turned out fantastic. I hope I've inspired you to work on your boat, perhaps fix a scratch or a nick that's been bugging you for a long time. But if you feel like you just need a little more confidence before taking on the job, you might check out Fish Bump TV here on YouTube. A guy named Joe Buskins. He's a boat captain and a boat builder, and he puts on a really nice tutorial on how to do these small Gelcoat repairs. I'll put a link for his channel here in the comments below. My boat turned out good, and I am ready to get to the next phase on the project. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe because next week is decal day and you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.